unfolds when one of Africa's most vocal young figures publicly confronts a Saudi Arabian crown prince on live television over the core principles of Islam. The result shook the Muslim world and placed diplomatic ties on a razor's edge. The African Union summit in Addis Ababa had been intended as a routine political gathering, but the encounter between Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traoré and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman became one of the most hotly debated religious confrontations ever aired to a global audience. It was March 15th, and what began as a panel on Islamic leadership in contemporary Africa quickly transformed into a theological clash that dominated headlines for weeks. The venue was the AU's new conference center, with delegates from 54 African nations present. The discussion, moderated by respected journalist Christian Amener, aimed to explore how Islamic principles could guide African governance today. 5 leaders sat at a polished mahogany table, yet before long, the world's attention was fixed on just 2 of them, the 35-year-old military head from Burkina Faso and the 39-year-old Saudi Crown Prince. Prince Mohammed spoke first, giving what many described as a standard diplomatic address outlining Saudi Arabia's commitment to supporting African Muslim nations through Vision 2030 projects. He highlighted the kingdom's custodianship of the 2 holy mosques and stressed unity among Muslim countries under traditional Islamic structures. In flawless Arabic, interpreted into English, he affirmed, "The kingdom remains devoted to fostering true Islamic leadership in line with centuries of religious tradition that has guided the Ummah for over 14 centuries." Captain Traoré listened closely, jotting occasional notes in French. When his turn came, the atmosphere shifted. Unlike the polished tones of prior speakers, his voice carried an uncompromising conviction that seized the room's attention. "Your Highness," he began in French, later translated into Arabic and English, "with full respect for your kingdom and its history, I must raise what I believe is a fundamental contradiction in your approach to Islamic leadership." Observers noticed the prince's posture stiffen slightly. Journalists sensed a departure from typical protocol. "You speak of authentic Islamic leadership," Traoré pressed, "while your kingdom engages in practices contradicting the Quran's commands for justice, equality, and compassion for the oppressed. How does this align with the example of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who consistently defended the poor and marginalized?" The hall fell silent. Diplomatic etiquette almost never allowed such direct challenges, especially on religious interpretation. Some delegates shifted uneasily, while cameras zoomed in on the 2 figures. The Crown Prince replied firmly, "Captain, our interpretation is built on centuries of scholarly consensus and the guidance of our religious leaders. We have preserved the sanctity of the holy sites and supported Muslims worldwide." But Traoré was not swayed. Consensus that serves entrenched power at the expense of those Islam came to liberate is not divine guidance. It is political manipulation in religious garb, he countered, voice rising. He quoted Surah Al-Hujurat, noting God created nations and tribes to know one another, not for some to claim superiority through holy site proximity or oil wealth. The prince's jaw tightened. "Captain, you are confusing political grievances with religious interpretation. Not about reckless confrontation, it is about building consensus and unity." Traoré replied instantly, "Unity built on silence in the face of injustice is not unity, it is complicity." He then shifted to a specific grievance, the treatment of African migrant workers in the Gulf. "Your labor policies," he said, "keep hundreds of thousands of African Muslims in near-slavery conditions. Islam abolished slavery more than 1,000 years ago, yet in practice, it continues under new names." His words landed like a blow, drawing audible gasps. The prince maintained his composure. "Our labor system is under reform. These issues cannot be solved overnight." Traoré's answer was firm. When Islam was revealed, reforms that ended oppression were not delayed for convenience. Justice delayed becomes justice denied. At this point, social media feeds began to light up. Clips from the live broadcast were already circulating on X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Hashtags in Arabic, English, and French translated to hashtag Traoré vs Saudi and hashtag Islamic Truth Debate. Many praised Traoré for speaking truth to power, while others accused him of disrespecting one of Islam's most important custodians. The moderator again tried to steer the conversation back, but both leaders were locked in a calm yet intense verbal duel. The African delegates knew this was unprecedented, a symbolic moment of an African leader challenging one of the wealthiest and most influential Muslim rulers before a continental audience. Traoré concluded his segment with a statement that would be quoted for weeks: "We in Africa do not need a gatekeeper between us and Allah. Our Islam does not need permission from Riyadh to be authentic." The room was still, save for the scribbling of journalists' pens and the clicking of camera shutters. The Crown Prince gave a short, restrained smile. "Captain, I pray one day you will understand that the Ummah is stronger when united under wise leadership." Traoré responded, "Wise leadership serves truth, not convenience." As the panel moved to the next speaker, the tension lingered in the air. Analysts would later note that neither man had shifted his position, but both had left an indelible mark on the summit. When the summit adjourned for a short break, the hallway outside the main chamber became a hive of diplomatic whispers. Some African ministers approached Traoré quietly, thanking him for saying what they themselves could not voice publicly. Others cautioned him that taking such a strong stand against Saudi Arabia could risk funding, trade, and even political alliances. Traoré listened to them but showed no sign of regret. "If we build our future on dependency," he told one minister from West Africa, "we will be building our own chains." His words carried the same conviction as his speeches back home in Ouagadougou, where he often told young people that sovereignty is worth more than wealth without dignity. The Saudi delegation moved swiftly to manage the narrative. Advisors to the Crown Prince spoke to journalists, emphasizing the kingdom's generosity in Africa and its commitment to reform. Yet, the conversation in the corridors and online had already shifted. It was no longer about aid or diplomacy, it was about the deeper question Traoré had raised: who truly speaks for Africa's Muslims? Within hours, think tanks and analysts began weighing in. Some argued that Traoré's approach risked alienating a vital partner in the Islamic world. Others said his challenge was a necessary wake-up call for Africa to reclaim its religious and political agency. International headlines framed it as a rare ideological clash between African independence and Middle Eastern influence. In Ouagadougou, the reaction was electric. Crowds gathered in tea shops, mosques, and public squares to watch replayed clips of their president's words. Social media pages dedicated to Pan-African unity hailed him as the voice of unshaken faith and the leader who fears none but Allah. Even those who disagreed with his style admitted that he had placed Africa firmly on the table in a global Islamic debate. Meanwhile, in Riyadh, the Crown Prince's advisors convened late into the night, discussing the implications. While no official statement condemned Traoré directly, Saudi state media subtly downplayed the exchange, portraying it as a healthy discussion among leaders, a clear sign they wished to avoid fueling further controversy. Traoré, however, did not soften his message. In a brief press conference before leaving the summit, he told reporters, "If my words cause discomfort, then perhaps it is time we examine why. Truth should never be the enemy of unity." He reiterated that Africa's role in the Muslim world should not be limited to being a recipient of aid, but as a partner with equal voice and authority. That evening, footage of his exchange was broadcast on television networks from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, sparking debates among scholars, imams, and youth leaders. In several African cities, murals of Traoré appeared overnight, depicting him with a raised hand and the phrase in Arabic, "We bow only to Allah." The moment had grown beyond the walls of the summit, it had become a defining statement of Africa's self-confidence in the global Muslim community. Whether it would lead to deeper alliances or sharper divisions was yet to be seen, but one thing was certain. Captain Ibrahim Traoré had planted a flag that would be remembered for years to come.